Welcome back. In this session, we will discuss how we can connect to a database using PHP. So before that, we will summarize all the things that we have learned so far in this course with a simple scenario. So I have already told you that when you are accessing a web page, there will be a client computer which will be used by you, and there will be a server-side computer which will provide you with the files. Okay, so here the right side shows a server-side part, and the server side will have lots of files, and those files includes HTML files and PHP files. So we have learned how to write HTML and how to write basic coding in PHP. And on the client side, person will be accessing an HTML file which is located in the server using any of the browsers available. So browsers means Google Chrome or Firefox. So when he opens a web page using Google Chrome, he will fetch the file from the server, and the browser will render the file in his screen. So this is a sample HTML form which has 3 text boxes: book title, author and shelf number, and it has a submit button. So when you click on this submit button, something should happen on the server side. So before that, need to fill up the details. So I have already filled up some details here: the name of the book, the author of the book, and the shelf number to which that book is placed. And when you click on the submit button, the data entered by the user on the form will be processed by the PHP, written on the server side, and the data in the form will be submitted to a table or a database which is again in the server side. So the database may be on the same server or another computer on the server side. The PHP will take up the data on the form and then put it inside server. You can do the reverse also. PHP can retrieve the data from the database and show it to the user on the client side. So this is what happens when you submit a form on the internet. So let's do an example for explaining all these things in a single program. So imagine we have a requirement to collect the book details in a library, and the details that you have to save to the database are the name of the book and the author of the book and the shelf number in which the book is placed. So first we have to create a table or a database for storing the details, an empty table. And then you have to create a form using HTML, and you can apply some CSS styling so that it looks good. And then you have to write the PHP code to process the data entered into the form and save the data into the table created. So let's do that. So take your editor and type in the HTML form. So let's start by creating HTML tag. And inside HTML, you can have the head tag. And within the head tag, you can have the title. You can say library data entry. Let's save this file. File, save. I want to save this in where www html and my web, and here I'll name it as library.html, and in the body part you can have the form and within the form we need 3 text boxes and 1 submit button. So the first one is input, type is equal to text, and let's name it. Name is equal to title, and then we can copy the same input 3 times, one for author the for shelf number. Finally, you can have a submit button. That's it. So let's save this file and see how this looks like in the browser. Say library.html. So this is how the form is looking right now. So we can modify it slightly. We don't know what is the information to be entered in the first text box, second text box, and third text box. So you can use a placeholder attribute that you have already learned. Placeholder is equal to book title, and for this one you can say placeholder is equal to author. For the last number you can say placeholder is equal to shelf number. Save the file, refresh it. You can see all the text boxes are separated, so you can apply some CSS styling so that it looks better. So for that we can have some style tag in the head section. So style tag here, style, and style here, and you can say the form should be having a width of 80%, sorry, some 30%, and you can say margin equal auto. So save this file. I can see the form is around 30% of the screen, and the margin is auto. That's why it is becoming a center aligned. And then we can have some border also here. Border equal to 1 pixel solid, and let's have a color of light gray. Save it. You can see a slight border here, and we can apply some border rate. Around 5 pixel. You can see there is a curve around the border. Okay, next styling that we have to do is for the input element, input, and for this one we can have a width of 80% of the form, and let's say display is block. So let's see the change. When we change the display to block, all these things appear in one line. So the first text box in one line, second text box in another line, third text box in another line, but there is no gap in between. That you can place by putting a break here. After every thing you can put a break. You can see that is separated by a slight margin. Now what you can do is to center align this one and put margin is auto. Save the file. Now everything is center aligned, and you can increase the height also. Height equal to 30 pixels. Now this is the increase. So this is a simple form, and if you want you can give some styling for the button also. Let's say style equal to background color dark green and color white. So save this file. I can see it is slightly changed, and you can have a heading also for this form. H1 align equal to center and say library data entry form and say one file. You can see all the details are intact. And next thing that we have to do is what should happen when you submit the form. For that, you have to give two attributes for the form tag, and the first one is the action attribute, and which should specify the PHP file to which this form has to be submitted, and the method attribute that we have already discussed, and I'm using method as post. So we have completed the creation of our HTML file. So next thing that we have to do is to create a database and table for storing all these details: book title, author, and shelf number. Before that, if you want, you can have a slight gap before this book title, so that we can do by placing two breaks here. Save the file, and also two breaks after the submit button. So your form is completed. Now let's create the database and table. So for that, you have to create the script. We'll open a new file and save the file inside the document folder. Say inside SQL, say library.sql. The first thing is to create a database. Create database library. Then you have to use the type. Then you have to use the library database. Inside the library, we need a table, books, with 3 columns. So let's create that. Create table books, which should have 3 columns. First one is title, and the type of this should be varchar, say 100, and author should be varchar 100, and shelf number as integer. So this is our simple table. So to create that, let's open the terminal. Go to MySQL terminal, MySQL -u student -p, give the password, then run all these queries. So your table is created. So let's see what is inside the table now. Select star from books, empty set. So that means there are nothing inside the table now. So we will be inserting data into the table, not using insert statement, but through our HTML form that we have created previously. So for that, need to connect the HTML form and this table using PHP. So the last step is to create the PHP file. So let's do that. So this is the HTML file that we have created, and on submitting this form, this is submitted to library.php. So what we have to create is a PHP file named library.php, which should process this data. So open a new file and let's say PHP and close it using question mark and greater than. So let's save this inside the same folder, www.html myweb. Inside that you can create library.php. Okay, so there are 3 statements required to connect to a database using PHP. First one is a function called mysqli_connect, which will connect your form or PHP file to the database. Next one is you have to execute a query using mysqli_query function. And finally, you have to close the connection using mysqli_close. So first, let's write the connect statement or connect function. So this is the connect function, mysqli_connect. This function should be populated with 4 arguments. First one is the name of the server to be connected. Second one is the username of the MySQL database. Third one is the password for the MySQL database. And fourth one is the database to which you want to connect. So we need to make all of them ready before doing the connect statement. So the first one is the server. Server is the name of the server or the IP address of the server. Since we are using the same computer for all these things, so in my case, the server is this computer, the client is this computer, and MySQL is also residing in the same computer. And you can use the word localhost for saying that my server is this machine itself, localhost. And then second variable that we can use is the username. You can say $username. And the username for MySQL is student. And the password that I have given is also student. And the database name that we have created now is library. So all these things are needed for connecting to the database. The first one is the name of the machine in which the database server is residing. So I will be using localhost since the same machine is used as the server. And the username is a username to enter into MySQL, and password is a password for the same. And DB name specifies the name of the database to which you want to connect. And in our case, it is library because we have named the database as library. So now we can use the connect statement. You can say mysqli_connect. First you have to give server, then you have to give username, then you have to give password, then you have to give DB name. And this function will return an object, let's say connection object, and I'm saving it in a variable called $conn. So if everything that you have given is correct, that is localhost, student, library, if it is correct, it will be a successful connection. And if there is some mismatch, suppose your password is not student, there will be an error. So you have to make sure that you have successfully connected to the database. That you can do using another function, and that is called mysqli_connect_rno. That means this will return a number if there was an error while you are trying to connect to the MySQL database. If there is no error, it will return false. So no error false means it's free of errors. So let's see whether it has some error. So you can say that if this one means if there is some error, then you can display the error message using echo mysqli connect error. So there are two functions used here. First one is the rno, which will return the error number if there was an error while trying to connect to the MySQL database. And this will just be a number. So you want to see what is the error, whether it is a password mismatch or is the username mismatch or it is the wrong server name. Then that description of the error will be retrieved using the function mysqli connect_error. Here it is rno, here it is error. So this statement will be executed only if there was an error while connecting to the database. And in that case, you have to exit this. So you can write that using exit function. So you will be exited from the PHP. And now we are hoping that there won't be any error when you connect to the database. So in that scenario, what you have to do is get all the data from the form. So we have the form here and the form has 3 text boxes named title, author and shelf number, and the form is submitted using post method. So you can retrieve the data like title. I'll be using 3 variables here, title, and I can get the submitted data using $_post that we have already discussed in the previous video. So post, and you can say title was the name of the form element. This is title, and the next one is author, and the next one is shelf number. So you can copy the same thing and replace it with author and shelf number, and here also you can say author, shelf number. So the 3 variables are ready. Next thing that we have to do is to insert the details into the table. So you need to create an SQL query, that is $_SQL_query. I'll be using a variable $_SQL query. So this can be written like this: insert into books is the name of the table, insert into books, and the columns are title, author, shelf number, and values is equal to the title here. So you can use title, and since this title, author are varchar type, you have to include them within single quotation. So I have to put it in single quotation, title. Same for author, but shelf number is an integer, so you can ignore the quotation for shelf number. So this is the query that we have to run when a user enters the details such as title, author and shelf number, and when he clicks the submit button, this is a query that you have to run. Okay, so that is done. Now we have to execute the query. We have formed the query, but it is not yet executed. So to execute, we need another function, and that is called mysqli_query. And it has 2 arguments. The first one is the connection that we have obtained here, and the second one is the query that you have to run, and that is $SQL_query. Again, here also we can check whether this query was successful by using if statement. If it was successful, it will return true, and you can say echo book details are entered successfully. So with this, we have executed the query on the SQL server. Next thing that we have to do is to close the connection. So for that, you can just say mysqli_close, and what you have to close is the connection that you have created initially. So this connection. So let's save this file and try this in the browser. So let's give a name, my book, and a name and a shelf number. Click on the submit button. You can see book details are entered successfully, and you can verify that. You can run the query again. So here you can see I haven't done the insert statement here, but the data has been picked up from the form and inserted by the PHP script. So details are here. Again, if you want to enter something, my book 2, and say some other name, ASDF, and same shelf, submit. Again, it's done successfully. My book 3, some other name, QR, and say 121, submit. So like this, you can keep on submitting data, and your database will be populated with more and more data. So This is how you will be connecting HTML form to a database using PHP. So let's summarize what we have learned to connect to a database using PHP. Step 1 is to connect to the database using MySQLi connect function, and the syntax for that was like this: MySQLi connect host, username, password and database name. And the host is the name of the server, username is the MySQL username, password is the password for MySQL, database name is the name of the database to which you have to connect. And it will return a connection object if it is successful. And step 2 is to check whether there was an error while trying to connect to the database. So that can be done using the function MySQL connect error number, and the syntax for that goes like this. So if there was an error while connecting to the database, it will be returned in error number function, and you can display the error message using MySQL underscore connect underscore error function. So this function returns an error if there is an error, otherwise it will return 0. In case of error, a description of the error can be displayed using the function MySQLi underscore connect underscore error. The two functions, error number and error. Step 3 is to create an SQL query string. For example, if suppose you want to insert some data into the table, then you have to create a query like this in a string variable. And step 4 is to execute the query using MySQLi underscore query function. And the syntax for that goes like this: MySQL underscore query connection SQL query. First argument is the connection object returned by the MySQLi connect function that we have used in the beginning. And the SQL query is the query string that we have created in the previous slide. And it returns false in case of a failure. It returns true in case of a success. Step 5 is to close the database connection using MySQLi underscore close function, and the syntax for that goes like this: MySQLi underscore close $connection. That is a connection object that you have used for inserting data into the table. And these were the codes that we have written so far. This is the HTML code, the SQL script that you have used for creating a library, and this is the PHP code that you have written for connecting the HTML form to the database. So with this we have concluded this course. So thank you.